In this video, I'm going to learn all about F-Class shooting from Erik Cortina, and I'm also going to punk him with the guest appearance from F-Class John. Well, hey, Erik. Good to see you, buddy.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, and I've been waiting to have this discussion. So here's what I want to cover is, I know pretty much nothing about F-Class. I've seen pictures of people competing. I've heard anecdotes from you about it. I want to start at the very beginning, talk about the sport, the different classes of competitions, and then we can get maybe into what skills do you need, maybe a little bit about the loads and the load development, a bit about the rifles and the rigs. How does that sound?
Perfect. So F-Class started as a, high power, the sling guys. They were shooting off a sling and off the ground. And George, I can't say his last name, so we're just going to say F. Farquharson, so he's Canadian. I can't say the last name. The point is, his last name started with an F, right? Mm-hmm. So he said, "Hey, what if I put a scope on my rifle, and we'll just create another class?" And they're like, "Sure." So they call it F class, right? And that's so F class has two classes or two classifications. They has F open and FTR. The original one was FTR. So what they did is they took a Palmer rifle, they added a scope, they added a bipod, they weighed it, and they said, well, it's about, I guess it'd be about the equivalent of about 9 kilos. So about 18 point something pounds. So that's what that came about. So they started F class. And then I believe later on they added open class, and that was where they added everything else. Open
Gotcha.
class is still limited to 33 caliber and under. You can shoot literally whatever you want, but the weight limit of the rifle and anything attached to the rifle is 22 pounds. Again, it's 10 kilos, so 22 point whatever. And the difference is obviously FTR, you have to be 308 or 223. Anything attached to the rifle counts, but you have to shoot off a bipod. So obviously the bipod counts towards the weight of the rifle because you have to have it attached. In F open, the weight limit is 10 kilos. And again, anything attached to the rifle counts towards the weight. However, we are allowed to use a front rest, which is not attached to the rifle. So that gives a lot more weight to the rifle. Right, the rest are, that rest can be 100 pounds, and it doesn't count towards the weight of the rifle. So, and of course you can have anything under 33 caliber. You cannot use a muzzle brake, so that actually limits how much. Like there's been people that actually show up with 338 Lapuas to shoot, but as you can imagine, it doesn't last long because without a muzzle brake, shooting 75. Yeah, there you go.
Yep, there's my 338. Just happened to have it out. Yep. I would not want to shoot that in an F-class competition from what I know about that.
I don't think nobody wants you to shoot that because those things are loud.
Yeah.
But that's basically the two classes. There's only two classes. There's people been playing around with trying to add others, but the two main ones are FTR and F open.
Gotcha. And what about distances that you're shooting at?
So you have mid-range and long-range. Mid-range is classified as anything 600 yards and in. Typically, 300, 500, 600 is the most common mid-range matches. We have at least in the United States, we have started to get away from 300 and 500. At the Nationals, they used to be 3, 5, and 6, and now they're only 600. And same thing for F open. They used to kind of have them mixed. You shoot a day of 600, and then you shoot a Palma, which was 800, 900, 1,000, and then you would shoot 1,000. But now the Nationals, the long range, have went to 1,000 strictly. So they're getting away from all the moving around. But to answer your question, 600 and in 3, 5, and 6 is mid range. 800, 900, 1,000 is considered long range. Some places do 1,200, but I don't think that's actually recognized as one of the, that's very seldom that anybody shoots 1,200. But it's done.
Would you be able to do TR at the mid-range and the long range and open at the mid-range and the long range as well?
You can't do both because you have duties that you have to perform. So you have to shoot, you have to score, and you have to pull targets.
Gotcha.
So you can only do one.
But if you were coming into a competition and you wanted to do open, would you have the choice of doing the mid-range or the long range and vice versa?
Yeah,
with
they're
the
usually
TR?
held separately. Like they're not.
Okay.
The nationals they're not at the same time. So yeah, you can do one or the other.
Gotcha.
You can actually have a bipod on an F open rifle, and it'll shoot. You'd be F open, right? Like again, that's the rules. It's kind of the limit, right, of what you can do. That's typically how we see it, right?
Right.
That's not the norm. It's the limit. Like how far can we push it? That's just the that's how the competition operates. And I don't think it's just F class. It's any other competition.
NRL hunter, right? You got to make power factor. You got to make weight, and it's a game. Right?
Yeah. So you could actually shoot F open with a bipod. You can shoot it with a 308. You can enter with anything less than I guess than the maximum allowed. You're allowed. So if you had a rifle, for example, you only had one rifle and you set it up as FTR 308 whatever, and then you make it a switch barrel, and then you throw 6BR barrel on there, a 6-dasher, whatever. You can actually shoot that in F open with your bipod, with your rear bag. Nothing changes, right? But of course, you wouldn't want to do that. You could do it for fun, but if you're trying to win, obviously you're at a big disadvantage.
So what are you currently shooting in terms of TR versus open and that mid-range versus the long range?
Well, I don't shoot TR. I'm strictly an F open shooter, and you're gonna find that that's typically what happens. Either shooters are TR or open. Sometimes they do play around. They decide to go shoot open for a while, or vice versa. The open shooter decides I'm gonna go shoot TR for a while. But typically, it's either open or TR shooters. They're different. I think the classes are different enough that we stick to one or the other. So I shoot F open. I started with a 6.5x47 Lapua. Well, I actually started with like a 300 Win Mag, and we've talked about that on the previous episode. But when I got serious about F class, I actually bought a 6.5 284 used, and it had a 6.5 284 barrel and a 6BR barrel. So I stuck to the 6.5 284. It was a used barrel. It didn't really perform very well. So I had to set back to a 6.5x47 Lapua, and that's when I started having some success with it. Once that barrel was gone and I was doing more long range, I decided to build a 284 Shihane, and pretty much I did away with everything else. I tried the Dasher for a bit. I tried, obviously, the 6.5x47 Lapua, but I finally just stuck with a Shihane. Because you can shoot a Shihane in mid-range. It's, you know what I mean? It's not a big deal, right? Guys shoot 300 WSMs at mid-range. The rules are the same, 33 caliber or under. So it doesn't matter if you're shooting 300 yards or 1,000. So I built the 284 Shihane, and that's pretty much been my go-to for the last decade. There for a while, the U.S. rifle team mandated that we had magnums. So I built I called it the F-class Magnum, the FCM. I took a 300 or a 270 WSM, and I pushed the shoulder back down 200 thousandths. So it had about a 7 SAUM capacity with a really long neck. But, at the time, you couldn't find good brass. And, I used that for a couple of seasons, and then I moved on to the 300 WSM and did that for about a year. And I finally just went back to the Shihane, and that's where I've been ever since until lately. Just this year, I chambered, actually last year, about November, right after Nationals, I chambered a 7 millimeter by 6.5 PRC. Yeah, the Wheeler. So Alex Wheeler came up with that My friend Jay Christofferson reached out to Alex and said, "Hey, what could beat the Shihane? But without, is there something else?" And Alex said, "Man, I bet you the 6.5 PRC could make a pretty good cartridge." So they measured the case capacity. They found out it's slightly larger than a Shihane, but of course you have Magnum bolt face, and it's a shorter case. All the qualities of a good, efficient cartridge. Of course, at the time, I don't like changing over like immediately. There's so many ideas that just don't work, that I don't want to waste time doing that. So I always usually wait until I'm getting beat by them, and then and then I join the crowd, because by then they're figured out, right? So anyway, so Jay played around with it for a couple of years, 3 years or so, and finally Lapua announced that they were going to make 6.5 PRC brass. And about that time, the competitive shooters just started kind of flocking to it. And then add that the fact that also Lapua suspended production on 284 brass.
Okay, right.
And 6.5 284. Well, that just kind of creates a perfect storm for the 7 PRCW, which is what I call it, the PRCW. PRC for PRC and the W for Wheeler.
Which is what I thought Hornady was going to do with it. When I first heard about the 7 PRC, I thought, all right, it'll be a long, short action, and they're going to neck up the 6.5 PRC. And it ended up being a totally different direction, which for what the 7 PRC is great. Comfortable in a long action.
If you saw my interview with George Gardner, he said the reason the PRC is what it is because it'll wipe out a 7 Remington Magnum chamber. Like if you have a Remington Magnum, you can just run a 7 PRC reamer, and it'll clean out the chamber. So,
yep,
that's the reasoning behind that, which is it's a really good idea.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like the 6 GT and the 6 Dasher. You can clean up a Dasher to be a GT, and guys are doing that, and yeah.
Yeah. So, but the 7 PRC is kind of the new kid on the block. It's doing really well. I mean, I have one, and it shoots really good. I get about 50 feet per second more than the Shihane. I mean, the Shihane, like my PRCWs, I'm running between 2930 to 2960 or 70.
Mm-hmm.
And I can run a Shihane at 2920, 2930, but that's kind of on the upper limit. Whereas the PRCW, that's kind of its happy place.
What is your bullet weight at that
180.
velocity?
180.
180s. Okay. Yep.
And so you can run, pretty much you can say you can run the same speeds on the PRCW as you can with a Shihane, but your brass life is going to be much longer on the Magnum case. You just have a when people ask me, well, what's the difference? And I'm like, well, the PRCW is a Shihane with a fat ass. That's all it is. Because that's
how I describe my truck.
Yeah.
I drive a dually, right? It's like another Dodge 2500, but fat ass.
Yeah, exactly. So and of course, the 284 Winchester and the Shihane, and I'll tell you the difference between the Win and the Shihane here a little bit, but the the thing about them is they're a kind of a fatter case, but the rim is still 473, just standard 308. So the rim is actually, or the case head is actually smaller than the case. So you're actually, the case is 500, and the head is 473, right? So the less material that you have around that primer, the faster you're going to lose primer pockets, right?
Right.
You take the PRCW, you're running the same speeds, but now you have a 530 thousandths head. So it's quite drastically bigger than the Shihane, right?
Yeah.
Now, as to the 284, which is probably still the most popular cartridge in F-Class, but probably not for long because people are moving over to the PRCW.
Mm-hmm.
But the 284 Winchester is pretty much 500 at the base, or not at the base, but at the 200 line. And you know what that means. Like if you measure from the base to the 200, 200 thousandths above that. It's going to be half an inch, 0.5, 501. Again, there's variations in reamer design, but let's call it 0.5. And the shoulder is going to be 475, 0.475. The Shihane, the only difference is that the shoulder's 0.485 versus 0.475. That's the only difference. It just has less body taper.
Gotcha.
Very little, but you can get up to 100 feet per second more than the 284 Winchester.
So we've gotten kind of down into the weeds on this 7 PRCW, but I have one more question about it, because I'm curious about this. I've thought about building a 7 SOM, but if you're coming into it cold and you don't have an investment yet, how does the 7 PRCW compare to the 7 SOM in terms of case capacity and performance?
The PRCW is slightly smaller, but you're going to be running about the same speeds, because the SOM, people are running them either at about 2920 or 2980, and the PRCW is kind of 2920 to 2960 or so. I mean, and all this depends on barrel length, powder used, and all of the above, right? Free bore. But I'm going to say on paper, there's no difference.
But if you can take 6.5 PRC brass, of which there are many manufacturers of now, and neck it and anneal it, do whatever you're going to do to get it to be a 7 PRCW, it seems like that might be a better route, and if you're really picky about the brass. Because what is available for 7 SOM, right? Like,
I think you have Norma brass, and I mean there's others, but the brass availability for the PRCW is much better. You have Lapua brass, and I think that's brass availability is what's kept the SOM to not be as popular as it could be in F class.
Right.
The PRCW is definitely the way to go, and if you're starting from scratch.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the experience of shooting a match. Let's say I rolled up to the match. I've got my rifle. Say I'm shooting F open, just to use an example. I've got my front rest. I've got my rifle, and then ammo. Like, is my ammo completely preloaded, or are you doing any bench rest type stuff at the range with powder charge and seating depth and stuff like that?
No, it's preloaded.
Okay.
Like I told you, you have to shoot, score, and pull targets. There is no time to do anything else. You are busy the whole time.
So if you're shooting, how do you get down to the targets to pull them?
So the way it works is, let's just say they have 4 relays. So they're going to split up relay 1 and 2 together, and 3 and 4 are going to be together. So what's going to happen is, let's say you relay 1, you're going to lay down, you're going to get ready, you're going to shoot. And relay 2 is actually going to keep your score. Okay,
so it's kind of like a set of people are bowling and another set of people are setting pins.
Exactly.
And tallying the scores. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so you shoot, target one, relay 1 shoots and relay 2 scores, and then you guys switch. Relay 2 is going to shoot and you're going to score. Once you guys are done with that, they do a pit change.
Okay. So when you shoot, then the guy takes the target down and looks at where things are at and writes it down or something and then puts it back up, is it?
Yeah, so it's a three-legged stool type of approach. You shoot, they all rely on each other, right? That's why you have to have all 3 of them. So you shoot, and the guy in the pits, the target, the shot comes over your head, it hits the target. The guy in the pits pulls it down, and then marks it with a spindle, about a 3-inch spotter. It marks it, and when I say it marks it, it has a stem in it, and it puts it in the hole, and it just stays there. And then around the perimeter of the target, it's a square, right? And if you're looking at the target, if you're center to the right, like at 3 o'clock, that's an X. 1 spot down is a 10. To the middle is a 9. To the lower left corner is an 8. At 9 o'clock it's a 7. And then back across where the X is, that's a 6. And then back where the 10 is, lower right corner is a 5. Okay. And the way you tell an X from a 6 is where the spotter is. Like if it's pretty close to the center and it's over there, you're like, well, that's an X. But if it's way out on the edge and you still have the marker where the X would be, you're like, okay, that's a 6. But anyway, it's just a visual aid. And the guy scoring for you, he's got a spotting scope. So he's looking through there and he's like, okay, that's a 10.
Okay, gotcha.
And he marks it a 10. In reality, the guy at the target, he's only marking the shots. That's it. And the shooter and the scorekeeper are pretty much the only ones that matter in a sense of making a decision to what the score is. For example, sometimes the guy at the target makes a mistake. Let's say you shoot an X. Let's say you shoot 10 X's in a row, and then you shoot a 10. And he's running really fast because you're keeping him perfectly centered, and you know he knows how important it is that they do fast pit service. Well, on the 11th shot, he brings it down, moves it over to the 10, and runs it up, but he forgot to move the spotter from the X to the 10. Well, the target, the guy at the target, you know, the scorekeeper, he can see, and the shooter can both see that, hey, that's obviously not an X. That's a 10, right? So they can just say amongst themselves, hey, that's a 10. Yeah, I agree. Mark it a 10 and move on, right? The shooter can at any point challenge the score, and so can the scorekeeper. So, for example, if I say, hey, that's a 10, and you go, well, it's marked an X. And I said, yeah, but it's obviously a 10. He goes, I disagree. The scorekeeper can say, challenge. And now you have to stop. The whole show stops. They have to call down to the pits. They have to ask the target puller to pull the target down, mark it properly, and run it back up. So if it's a real switchy wind situation, you don't want that. You don't want that big period, the waiting period, because it's probably going to cost you more than an X.
Because the conditions change.
And,
yeah.
Right. But that's how it works. Typically, it's unlimited siders and 20 shots for record, meaning once you can go on, you can shoot 30, 40, 50, 100 siders if you want. Obviously, it'd be kind of silly. And typically, you have 30 minutes once you start. Well, they give the starting.
Siders?
Yeah, no. They give everybody 30 minutes, and they say starting
total.
Now. You know?
Gotcha.
And now they started the timer, 30 minutes. You can lay there for 20 minutes if you want and do nothing. You can go to the rest. You can do whatever you want. It is your 30 minutes. All you have to do in 30 minutes is put 20 shots on target for record.
Okay. This is so different. The matches I've shot are PRS matches, and it's like you've got 90 seconds to engage 4 targets from 440 out to 1,200 or whatever
PRS
nonsense,
is very dynamic. PRS is very dynamic. And but in F class, they say 30 minutes. And you have, like I said, your duty is to put 20 shots on paper. You actually don't have to put all 20, but you're going to lose 10 points for every single one that you don't shoot, right? So, unlimited siders. You can shoot, again, you can shoot 1, 2, 20, whatever. But once you tell the scorekeeper, I'm going for record,
okay,
the very next shot, it's a record shot. You can actually say, I'm going for record. And if you lay back down and you find out the wind completely switched, you can look back at him and say, hey, never mind. I'm not going to go for record just yet.
Okay.
But if you say, I'm going for record, and you take the shot, and it comes up a freaking 8 way down there, you can't say, hey, you know what, never mind. You're like, no. That was for record, you know?
Right.
And now the next 20 shots are counted. Rain, shine, literally rain or shine, doesn't matter. Wind, no wind, that's it.
And you're proned out, maybe with the front rest. You've got your ammo, your single loading. Is that correct?
Correct. Single loading is actually in the rules. You can't have a mag. So, you use a front rest, a rear bag, and you don't have to have a mechanical rest. It's allowed, but if you say, you know what, I'm going to go out there and just put a 2x4 in the front or a bipod or whatever, you can do that. But obviously, we're gonna have a mechanical front rest. Seb rest or the way to go. That is the most common.
With the little joystick.
Yep.
Where you can.
With the joystick.
Yeah.
A rear bag, a sandbag, and so you're trying to eliminate the shooter as much as possible. Obviously, you're gonna have really good ammo. And this is where, and we can go into the weeds as deep as you want when we talk about loading ammo. But as far as the shooting, you have a front rest, a rear bag, you have your shooting mat, you have your ammo right there with you, single load. Typically, we come to the line with a timer because time, like I said, if they give you 30 minutes, which seems like an eternity, until you start shooting and the wind keeps switching and you're trying to hit a 1 MOA target for 20 shots in a row. So 30 minutes sometimes seems like it's way too short. Seriously.
Yeah. I like this because you get the time to be more precise, right, than that whole PRS scenario. This is more of an OCD thing, like, get out your micrometer.
And that in itself can be the problem. Because in PRS, you almost have no time to think. Because you're like, let's go. And that's it. You can't, if the wind switches, you can't say, well, I'm going to wait until it comes back. No, you just got to go, right? Where in F class, you have the option to not shoot for, like I said, you can say, you know what, I know I can get all my shots off in 7 minutes once I go for records. So I'm going to wait 20 minutes for this wind, see if it becomes to the point that I can read it a lot easier. But if you wait too long, sometimes you're waiting, and it just gets worse. And now you have no choice but to shoot, right? So it's sometimes having too much time is a problem because you get paralysis by analysis, and and then the more you think about it, the more you become more tense, especially when you decide not to shoot and the guy next to you is just piling X's and 10s, and they get done with a clean score. And now the wind is really getting bad and switchy, and you're like, oh crap, I just made a terrible mistake,
Yeah. So let's talk about the enemies of getting targets or shots where you want them on target. You've got obviously the wind.
Yep.
You've got your ammo and your rifle potentially malfunctioning. You've got mirage. What else? And what are the biggest things that you're fighting with to get those shots to land where you want them?
Well, wind is going to be number one. That's going to be the one that's going to keep you. If you think about it, if you run the ballistics, 284 Shehane, they drift about a quarter MOA per 1 mile of wind. So, if this target is if you're in the center, that means you only have 2 miles an hour before it puts you outside the 10 ring, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So you have to read wind within 2 miles an hour. So it's...
And you've got flags, do you?
You have flags, and obviously you have mirage, but the flags are, again, 2 miles an hour is very little wind. Like, I don't even think... If you look at a wind chart where they teach you how to read wind, I think it starts at 3 to 5. 2 is not even in the radar, So it's very little wind.
So do you then default to mirage then to look at that angle and that movement, or how do you get down to 2 miles per hour? That's a good question.
I do. I read mirage if so. The absolute best wind indicator is your previous shot.
Okay. Yeah.
The second best is in my opinion, is mirage, and the third one is wind flags. Because mirage reacts faster than wind flags. So that's where stopping can really hurt you, because now you lose that advantage of your previous shot. So you have absolute wind reading, and then you have relative wind reading. Absolute is what you would do in PRS on your very first shot. You're trying to read the wind, you're trying to assign a value, and you're trying to compare it against your ballistics, and then you make an educated guess as to what it's doing, and you get an absolute wind call, right? Once you shoot, let's say in PRS, I think it's going to emphasize it a little better. let's say you shoot PRS and you get your wind reading, your distance, all your atmospheric conditions, whatever it is that you need to make a wind call, right? Distance, angle to the target in relation to the wind. So you're going to make an absolute wind call. You say, this is 8-mile wind coming from 4 o'clock, and I'm shooting a 6-dasher, whatever. I'm going to hold 0.6 mils, right? And you shoot. And you miss 0.2 to the right. And let's say this target is 0.4 wide, right? So you aim center, you miss 0.2 to the right. You don't stop and change your kestrel.
Right.
Now you make a relative wind call. You go, oh, I hit 0.4 to the right. Boom, you shift over 0.4 to the left, and you just keep hammering. That's absolute versus relative. Well, in F class, we start with absolute, but once we start shooting, it becomes relative wind reading, right? So, and that's where experience comes in. It's very hard for anyone to teach you wind reading just from reading a book. It's so hard. It's like swimming. You can read all the books about swimming you want, but unless you're out there actually in the water, it's going to be hard. So, now you talk about the 2 miles. How do you pick up on that? Well, most of the time from your previous shot, right?
So do you try and minimize the time between the sighters and then your go time because you have that relative shot?
Yeah, that's the ideal.
Okay.
But this is where your scorekeeper comes in. Sometimes you look at him and you go, hey, I'm going for record, and he's over there in La La Land, trying to see how his buddy's shooting or whatever, and then it takes you 30 seconds to get his attention, which should not happen, by the way. If you're a scorekeeper, you should be keeping score, and that's why I put that in earlier about if you lay back down and now everything changed. As long as you haven't shot, you're not in record, right? You can look back and say, never mind, but yeah, you want to minimize that, and a lot of shooters do, me included, something called chasing the spotter. You shoot really fast. If the wind's not changing very much, you get centered up, and then you say, I'm going for record, and you shoot. And if it hits slightly to the right, you aim slightly to the left. And if it hits left, you're just trying to chase that spotter, trying to keep it centered up. When it starts to really matter is when it starts to get windy and you start to get wind picking up or dying down. That's when it really matters that you know what to look for. Because you have wind speed and then you have wind direction, and any of those two can throw you outside that one-way target. But
so is it being a good wind reader and reactor that separates the top shooters then from the next pack down?
Oh,
like
yeah.
a top 5?
Yeah, you have to be a good there. Once you get to the top, there's a lot more than wind reading, because you also have to handle the mental game. You have to be mentally tough to where if you decide to wait and your neighbor just shot a clean score, and he shot when you were not shooting, that it doesn't get you down, that you go, it's okay, I can still do this, versus, oh crap, I screwed up. Mentally there's a lot going on. And also to have the ability to stop and have the mental strength to say, oh man, you know what, this is getting really bad, I'm just going to stop, and I'm just going to have to jump in back. I'm going to have to jump back in blind later, but I think it's better than me trying to plow through this, right? So that takes a lot of decision making, and oftentimes you make the wrong decision and you're done, and I say you're done because in F class you shoot for 3 days and sometimes you're separated by a point. So it only takes one or 2 points, and that could be the difference between first place and like 5th place,
Crazy. Yeah, I was talking with Gordy Gritters, who I know you had on Believe the Target recently, and he was talking about in bench rest how many thousandths of an inch at 600 yards it would be to separate the top person from the 10th person. And it was a ridiculously small number. I don't remember what it was, but it was like, whoa.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, when I had, some of these bench rest guys, the 100-yard bench rest shooters, Bart Souter, when he won, he said his average or his aggregate was like .250, and second place was 2.502, so 2/10,000ths of an inch. So, I mean, it's crazy. Like, I'll tell you a story, and my buddy F-Class John's probably gonna get mad at me for telling it, but it's a funny story, and it's public, so it's okay.
I hope to meet him one day. By the way,
oh, dude, you need to. I don't think you guys are both on the West Coast. You guys need to meet. But
is he like down in Oregon or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a
I'll
lot
make
closer to you than I am.
That's gonna be high on my priority list then.
Yeah, you need to meet this guy. But so John and I are shooting, and he actually had somebody filming him shoot, and it just so happened that on the last day, him and I were squatted next to each other. Like, he was on target 43, and I was on 44. So as they were filming him, they were filming me as well, right? So we're shooting, and I'm shooting a borrowed gun. So I start, and I shoot three nines upwind for record. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm centered up, going for record. First shot, 9. I move in, 9. I move in again, 9. I said, okay. What happened, I jumped right in when the wind was dying down. And I was trying to catch it. But anyway, so I stopped. And then I decided to jump back in. And I jumped in with a 10 or an X. And then I ran a few shots. And it started dying down again. I thought, okay, I got it now. I know how much to move. Well, I moved. And I still hit a 9. And I thought, well, I'll stop. So I stopped. So I was jumping in and out repeatedly. And every time it cost me like a point, right? So I'm down like 6 points. And John hasn't started yet. And I know he's watching me because that's what you do, right? You use your neighbors as input.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You use everything you can, right? That's the thing about F-Class. It gives you enough time that you can use anything you want, or that you can for reading the wind, making a decision when you're going to jump in. But anyway, so he's just watching me, and I'm going, and I'm suffering through this because I'm jumping in and out. I'm down like 6 points, and then it dies completely down, and he jumps in, and of course I'm not shooting because I was not. Mentally, I had not been shooting in those conditions, so I didn't want to jump in and make a mistake. So I was just waiting for my condition, which was a left to right wind, So I'm watching John shoot, and John is just plowing through this, and then it starts to switch, and John just stays with it so beautifully. And he's just pounding shots down there, and he's staying clean, and I'm like. This whole time I'm going, oh man, he caught it just perfect, Well, it starts to build, and his shots start to drift downwind. Mm-hmm. He's still keeping it in the 10 ring, but he's drifting. And every shot I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna stop now, and he shoots another one, and it's a downhill 10, and I'm like, okay, he's gonna stop because now he's not centered up. Like the wind is kind of beating him, He's not out, but he's going to stop anytime now. Well, he shoots again, and now this time he shoots a 9 downwind. And I know that when he shot the downhill 10, I know he moved over on target. He gave it more wind, right? I know that because that's what you do. And even after he did that, he still shot a 9. That means the wind is picking up faster than he can keep up with it.
Interesting. Do you remember that F-Class, John?
That was a pretty rough day.
Yeah! Got him.
I have to say, you remember it pretty accurately, though. Because, there was a point where I was like, I'm going to beat Erik on this relay. And then I downwind a 9, downwind a 9, downwind an 8.
I didn't even get to the
I'm better
punchline.
than the wind.
I didn't even get to the punchline.
Yeah, go ahead. Get to the punchline because I'm the punchline.
Oh, I guess you guys have met, huh?
Maybe.
So anyway, well now John's there. He can attest to this as being true. And I'm watching, and I'm like, anytime now he's gonna stop. You know, he's gonna stop, and because he hits the downwind 9, and I'm like, okay, he's gonna stop now. He shoots another one. Now he hits a 10, and I'm like, oh man, he's in it to win it, right? And then he shoots again, and again it's a downwind 10. Then he shoots again, and it's a 9 again. I thought, okay, now he's gonna stop. Nope, not F-Class John. He sends another one, and now it's an 8. Okay, that means now he's drifted.
Hard 8.
Yeah, hard 8. That means he's drifted a full minute and a half more than he had, even though I know for a fact he compensated. So that now from that 9 to that 8, there was probably about a 2.5 minute change in wind, like big. And I'm like, okay, now he's stopping. And I actually get off the gun because I'm like, okay, now he's stopping. And as soon as I get off the gun, I look over. He took another shot. So I get back on my gun to see another 8. Now
You got to validate it.
Now he stops. So, long story short, I thought I was doing horrendous and he was doing amazing. And by the time it was all said and done, I actually beat him by 1 point. So you just never know what it's going to be like. Now, had he stopped, he would have done really well. And he can tell you that now. But it's one of those, like I said, it's about decision making and when to make the decision. And sometimes you're wrong and you're just wrong. Even though it looks, I mean, he had like 14 or 15 shots on paper. He was almost out of there. And I think that's what happened. He started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. He's like, I'm just going to go for it, you know? And
If I run faster, I can make it.
And the dragon came in and just swooped him up and
Well, and
slammed
people
him
don't
down.
realize, if they watch because we did a video where we talked about that, but that second 8, I was literally so I started the relay maybe left 1 or something. So I'm holding the left side of the 10 ring, or 2 out. I guess that was 2 because I think I was still on the 10 ring. And by that 8, my crosshairs were on the edge of target. And that second 8, I was 2 subtensions off the target. And that's when I was like, what the hell am I doing?
It's a big target. It's a big target. So,
Yeah, that was something. Hey, good to see you, Erik.
hi, John. That was a good one.
I think I sense a reaction video getting distilled out of this whole interview.
Yeah.
That's going to be good.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to do is, this sounds like a really fun game, but I'm not going to really be able to get my head around this unless I try it. So
Look to your right. He can help you with that. A lot, I can help you, but John can he's got all the gear, right? And the best thing you can do is meet up with John.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys already did. But
yeah,
but get behind an F-class gun, and
Yeah.
you're really going to start to really understand how it works. And it sounds, on the surface, it sounds very easy. It sounds like, oh, well, you just pull the trigger. You don't even have to aim the gun, or, you don't even have to hold the gun. It sounds extremely easy, and I think that's where a lot of people say, well, F-class is just boring. Kind of similar to the reaction that you had when you said, oh, well, in PRS, you just shoot. You don't have time. Yeah, sometimes that's better that they don't give you an option to think, And don't get me wrong, they're totally different. I've shot at PRS. It's a lot of fun, but it's just a different type of environment that you are put through, in a sense of how do you get those target or those shots on target.
Yeah, and I think F-Class might resonate with me because even with handgunning, I always default to I want precision, and laser placement over something quick and dynamic. So for me to put myself into a PRS match is a really good exercise. It takes me out of my comfort zone. It pushes me hard, learning all dynamic, all fast. But the F-Class feels like a little bit more of that bench rest DNA infused into it. And just, I have people that want me to build them F-Class guns. So if I build if I build an F-class rig and then I come and shoot with you guys and
Oh yeah.
and try it out, I think that would be, maybe I'll get hooked. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to find you a match or two out here.
Yeah.
So the thing about F-class, again, it sounds, oh, well, you got 30 minutes. You know, that's not that hard. Sometimes, and John can tell you this, you lay there for 30 minutes and you put those 20 shots on paper and you are exhausted because you are literally stressed the whole time you're there because you don't know when to jump in, when to jump out. And it's just a lot of stress, you know, again, decision making and under tremendous amounts of stress.
You know, I think about what you were saying with the, you know, watching targets and the stress and stuff. And for me, I will tell you one of the worst things for me is you kind of go in with a plan, right? And you have to be fluid. And I haven't really shot PRS, so I don't know how it goes. But you know, with F-class, you kind of go in with a plan, but you got 30 minutes, so things can change. Well, if I know there's shooters around me, like I know where Erik is, and I know where a couple other guys are, I'm going to use their targets. But the worst is you're like, well, I just don't feel like, you're just not feeling it, and then suddenly they're out, and you're like, crap, I can't use their target, and then they're out, and then they're out, and pretty soon you've lost that tool.
Right.
Right. So like Erik said, it's this whole balancing act of how you get those tools to work with each other. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Very cool. So yeah, it's a funny story I was telling John before we got onto this call. Brian from Wolf's Prairie Outdoors, he does a lot of really nice photography and lever gun stuff, right? He's this company Wooks, chassis manufacturer, says, oh, you know, check out this F-class thing. And he calls me yesterday and says, what am I looking at in an F-class thing? And I said, talk to me in 2 days.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be talking about this with Erik Cortina and F-class John, and I don't know what I'm talking about today, but we'll talk about it later. So that's part of the follow-up, though, is I want you guys to help me put a rig together and, you know, make it something that would be competitive. It doesn't have to be, you know, world-class winning rig, but like, what is a typical?
Stop.
There's only one kind of rig.
There's only one kind of rig, and it's going to have to be world-class.
Nice. Let me rephrase that. I'm not saying I'm going to win a world-class championship, but I want to learn what makes a good competitive F-class rig.
Yeah.
And of course, my big passion, you know, chambering, machining, low development, all that kind of stuff. So this will kind of be a dynamic unfolding journey for me.
Yeah, so you said it has a lot of the bench rest kind of DNA in F-class. A lot of people call F-class belly bench rest. You know, that's another kind of name for F-class. But it's hard to really paint a picture. But once you're there and, you know, you're pounding X's and you're like, just when you start to think, oh, this is not that hard. And all of a sudden, you see a flag kind of do that, and all of a sudden you got a 9 down there, and everybody else around you caught it, and now they just moved over, and now they keep hitting 10s and X's, and you go, God, how did I miss that? You know, what did I miss? And you do enough of that, and all of a sudden everybody around you has, you know, clean scores of 199s and 198s, and you're sitting there with a 192 going, how did I get here? You know, how did all these other guys or shooters, because there's women there too that can just absolutely freaking hammer. And then you go, you know what? I want to be able to do what they did, whatever it is that they did. And then it just sends you down this journey, never ending journey so far.
Yeah,
for me.
obsession.
Yeah.
I've talked to you enough, Erik. I know this is like you said, I'm a competitive shooter number one, right? And kind of everything else, like, you know, is supporting that mission, like Cortina Precision, the tuners. You know, we were talking at the SHOT Show about you throwing inline cedar dies on the lathe and chopping them down so that you get, you know, perfect chamber match and perfect concentricity. And that's what I like about this is it's like that bench rest, the DNA, but also you're shooting at targets with the different dynamic with the long range aspect of it.
Well, you're shooting
that.
for score.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I know benchers, they also shoot for score, but their primary objective is group. So even if the wind drifted them down 1 MOA, as long as they shoot a tiny group down there, they're happy. That's kind of what John did. He had a real nice group going in the 8 ring. That's what made him stop, because he wants that group in the X ring, right?
Yep.
Well, what do we always say in F class? You paid for the target, you might as well use all of it.
Yeah.
So bench rest guys need precision only, and you guys need precision and accuracy.
Yep. We need
Because
both.
it's got to be in the black, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be
Interesting.
And this is where the crazy thing comes in, especially after talking to a lot of these, doing the podcast, over on Believe the Target, talking to a lot of these PRS shooters and these kind of practical field shooters. They don't realize that our target is 1 MOA, which sounds, most people would say, oh, 1 MOA? That's big. Not when you're trying to put 20 shots on that thing, right?
And a lot happens in 1,000 yards. I mean, we're not talking 100-yard 1 MOA. We're talking about wind and around here, all sorts of nasty dynamics in the canyon and all that.
So I tell them, I said, if I was a 1 MOA shooter all the time, there wouldn't be a match that I wouldn't win.
Right.
But 1 MOA is very hard to do, like consistently at 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I tell people, our goal is to hit a dinner plate at over half a mile 20 times in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, the other thing about F class, talking about why I chop up my dice and I true them up and my brass, I neck turn and a lot of that, Don Nagel used to say, I do about 20 things. When I reload, I do about 20 things. And in reality, about 10 are needed. The problem is I don't know which 10. Right?
Right.
So, the thing about all the bullet sorting and the brass turning and the barrel chambering to the most perfection that I can achieve, and the rifle and the scope and all of the above, all that is mainly so that when you do miss that, you've been hitting nothing but X's and all of a sudden you hit a 9, that it was nothing that you did. It was the wind. Like it wasn't because you decided to not trim your brass, or it wasn't because you decided not to, I think 2/10 run out is good enough on my chamber, or you know what I mean? There is absolutely zero doubt. That you did everything ahead of time. All the work was done. And if it didn't happen, it didn't happen.
Yep. Remove every variable that you can. Right.
When the record was 200 with 17 X's, I shot a 200 with 16, and 2 shots were as close to the X ring as you could get without actually touching it. I mean, there was just daylight. And to this day, I'm okay with that because I did all the work. I did everything I could. So it wasn't meant to be. But had I shortcut anything, I'd probably still be kicking myself to this day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the difference, I think.
Nice. Well, this has been fun. Glad we were able to punk you with
Y'all are funny. Y'all are so funny.
unplanned guest appearance. Yeah.
I'm glad you guys got to meet because you guys needed to meet.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, this is kind of my favorite part about my job, honestly, is the people you get to meet, the people you get to hang out with and get mentored by. I want to come down to Texas and see your whole spread, Eric, and check out your machine shop and,
Oh, yeah.
just do all that at some point. That'd be a lot of fun.
John's seen it. Actually, John has seen it, but he saw it a year ago, and now it's drastically changed. It's like a weed, man. It just keeps growing, which in a good way, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's we're constantly just pushing, and trying to do things better, and all of the above.
Awesome. Okay, so last thing is for any of you watching, if you have questions for F-Class John or for Erik Cortina, drop a comment, and we'll keep this conversation about F-Class shooting and what it's all about and what it takes going. And I do plan follow-up content too, so make sure that you check that out as well. Erik, as always, it's been awesome to have you. Appreciate you taking the time. It's been really fun to talk about this stuff. John, thanks for coming and punking Erik with me.
It's been fun, man. I appreciate it. And again, John can help you. John is a very good F-class shooter. He knows the stuff, so he can help you. you know, and the biggest thing is he can actually show you. But yeah, good deal, man. Thank you for the chat, and stay in touch.
Yeah, that concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. If you're interested in custom rifles like what we build here on the channel or gunsmithing services, you're going to want to go to rifles.ultimatereloader.com and get on the wait list. If you're interested in becoming a professional gunsmith, check out the Sonoran Desert Institute. They've got a degree program, they've got a certificate program, and you can study from home. Learn more at sdi.edu. Thanks again for watching.